Hey YouTube, this is Brian Norris. I'm writer at Ammo Land, The Arms Guide, Loadout Room, and sometimes my articles are featured on SoftRep. On YouTube, I post as Rev to the Limit. None of those things really matter. YouTube, I'm doing this video to simply state as strongly as possible, unban James Yeager. Now, I should say at the outset that James Yeager is someone who's been very kind to me, somebody who's been very gracious to me, and someone who I like to consider a friend. I respect him. I'm thankful for the work that he's done and is doing in our culture. That being said, even if I disagreed with him vehemently, I would still be making this video because of some things that I think are really important. I want you to notice that we can see culture weakening, or we can see a society's weakness by the way we interact with the arena of ideas, the free exchange of ideas. And YouTube, you have become successful because you have been the place. You have been the place where creatives have come, when people who have a voice, where they have come to share that voice and to gain an audience. You've been the place where there's been free expression and free thought, freely broadcast for people to determine whether the ideas, the entertainment, the art, the music that was downloaded there to you, to your site, people had the freedom to determine whether it had merit. And based upon its merit and its merit alone, that content has traditionally received a hearing, a following, an audience. James Yeager is a guy who no doubt is controversial. That's not the point. The point is this. We have something that's happening that is indicative of the weakness of society. It's just as clear as can be, and we're seeing it happening progressively, more and more and more often. It reminds me a lot, honestly, of religious fundamentalism. And don't hear me wrong, those of you that know that I'm a pastor know if you listen to any of my teaching, you'll hear quickly that I am as committed to Orthodox Christian theology as ever. I'm as committed to the fundamentals or the essentials of the faith as I've ever been, and living those things out. But fundamentalism as a Christian subculture, I experienced years ago this same activity, this same kind of character trait. I'll just tell you quickly, I was traveling the country, my wife and I, our toddler daughter, our first daughter, my wife was pregnant with our second daughter, and we had signed up to travel the country. I was speaking 3 to 4 times a week at different churches. We're in our minivan going. We went 30,000 miles, over 30,000 miles that year. And I noticed this really quickly. Within this subculture, all these churches were of the same faith and practice. They were of the same denomination, the same background. They were in the same camp. And yet, what I began to experience was one church would discover that on my speaking schedule, I was speaking at another church that they had some tertiary minor disagreement with. And because they found out I was speaking there, they would cancel my speaking engagement at their place down the road. And what they were doing is they misinterpreted some things about holiness, some core concepts, and as a result of those things, they were now, after having built a culture on separatism, on fighting, and being misinformed that the fight was no longer on. They thought they had won some fights, and so they began to infight. They had a culture built on fighting, and so they fought within themselves, and they were seeking to one-up one another and see who could be the holiest of the holiest of the holy rollers, if you will. That was their goal, and they wouldn't have said that. That wasn't top of mind, but that's what was in reality happening. They had gotten off mission as a result of that. You can see it throughout all kinds of subcultures. in the liberal kind of social justice community, you can observe it. And because I'm not within that community, I kind of chuckle at it sometimes, that you see people trying to be the most woke of the woke. You know, they're arguing with one another, and they're refusing to align with others and to have friendship with others based upon someone's friendship with someone that doesn't agree with them. There's this kind of weird secondary separation. What's really happening is a kind of fear culture, a fear language is being used to try to force the rest of the group to conform. And what that is indicative of is always a subculture or a group of people that don't believe that they have the strongest idea, or aren't willing to take the time and the hard work to make sure that they have an idea or a concept or an argument that will be able to do battle in the arena of ideas. And so what they do is they play the man rather than the idea, rather than the concept, rather than the argument. Back in the day, Aristotle and Aristotelian logic talked about argumentum ad hominem, and he said it was a logic fallacy. And all that is playing the man rather than the actual argument. If somebody can't beat your argument, they play you. They try to tear you down and destroy your people's look at you. Now, here's the thing, and I did a couple of this. I'm rusty at this right now. I'm kind of rambling on, but let me just say this quickly. I did a couple of these videos earlier today, but I did one, and I went to post it. I took a lunch break because I felt so, and it went great, and I went to upload that thing, and the SD card was corrupted. And then I had to go back to work, and I stopped again later on today. I'm like, well, I got to do it again, and the SD card again didn't work right. Only about half of the video worked out, and so I'm stopping one more time. I care about this much, but that I'm stopping one more time this evening to make this video and to simply say, unban James Yeager. I'm telling you, you don't have to agree with him. You don't have to care at all about watching any of his videos. In fact, you could hate his videos if you're for the free exchange of ideas. If you want a stronger culture, a stronger society, even those of you that completely disagree with Mr. Yeager's positions, if you want to have a strong society and a strong culture, you have to have the free exchange of ideas in idea marketplaces like YouTube. And YouTube is a private business, and I understand how AdSense works. This isn't a discussion of whether they can restrict monetization or not. That's a different conversation, and I think that wasn't a wise decision that they made earlier about that. But that's not here. Now we're simply talking about using a tool that, to my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding has always been that the strike system at YouTube is used to protect copyright law, to protect intellectual property. And I watched that last one. I don't know about what others, what the other two strikes for James Yeager's channel were all about, but that last podcast that they did, that was those three guys' intellectual property. They weren't using somebody else's copyrighted material. Those were their thoughts coming straight from them on the fly, off the cuff. I don't know how you could claim that they were infringing upon somebody's intellectual property, or that they had any use, there'd been any reason why you would claim copyright infringement. And so it appears that you're going far beyond that, and you're striking content that you just don't like. It's not pornographic. It's not any more offensive than strange alien conversations that people are having on YouTube, or Antifa conversations, for goodness sakes, that people are having on YouTube. There is so much crazy, radical, right and left-wing conversations throughout your space that no one seems to be restricting. And yet, and you shouldn't be, by the way. You shouldn't be. And yet, here, Here we are. You're you're shutting down a channel. And I just want you to know that if you don't unban James Yeager and others like him, you don't do that, you will cease to be the marketplace of ideas, of creative expression, of art that you have been historically. I know that, like, think about it this way. You do not want artists in this country starting to play it safe. You don't want authors to be concerned with how they'll be taken. You don't want painters to start to say, well, I need to keep everything in the lines. You certainly don't want musicians to pull back and not press forward with making people even slightly uncomfortable as they press the limits of what's been done before. This is how great art is done. You don't want to be the thought police. You don't want to be restricting voices. You want to be doing what you've done traditionally. You want to be cranking up the volume and giving people a platform to share their voice and allow the mass of society to allow the merit of the message or the content to allow it to rise or to fall. Unban James Yeager. I realize that posting a video like this will likely make me a target gun channel. Whatever. I realize that people will say, well, James Yeager's content, why are you going to bat for that, Brian? What's the big deal about that? Why are you taking your time? You're a pastor. What are you doing over here? And some people will think that I'm on the right fringe as a result of this. It's nothing to do with that, and maybe from their perspective in certain issues I would be. That's neither here nor there. The point is, we are weakening as a society and a culture because we are putting a governor on the free exchange of ideas, and people are progressively more and more using things like playing the man, argumentum ad hominem, to shout down someone that they don't have the ability or are not willing to do the work to create an argument or an idea that actually will hold water against it. And that's super problematic. I mentioned the kind of social justice community earlier, and you hear a lot of conversation about safe spaces, and what they're really saying is, I don't feel, when they say I don't feel safe there, and so I'm not going to accept the invitation, they say, no, I am, they're saying things like sorry, my dog's coming in here and I'm getting distracted by him. Hey, Kimber, what's happening, big guy? So they're saying things like, they're complaining about not having a platform and being a marginalized voice and all these things. And then somebody reaches out and says, okay, you want to enter the arena of ideas? Come on, you can come share my platform. Come, I don't agree with you. I'm going to contest your viewpoint. But come on, come and tell us what you have to say. 9 times out of 10 today, you'll hear those people say, well, that's not a safe space. I don't feel like I can come into that culture. What they're not saying is, I actually feel like there will be bodily harm inflicted upon me. What they are saying is, I don't want to do the work to shape my message to be able to allow it to hold water in that context. And so I'm going to use a convenient excuse, namely that you're not a safe space and that you're attacking my identity and all these things. They say all these things to take themselves off the hook and allow society to think that, oh, it's okay, we can just throw that opinion aside. We don't have to deal with it. Listen to me. We have to deal with every opinion, and the strong ideas will survive. Don't buy into this. Unban James Yeager. Unban James Yeager. If you don't, you're a part of the problem rather than the solution. This is Rev to the Limit. See you guys next time. Man, keep it pumping out. We need to see James Yeager back on YouTube. I'm sure that there's lots of other outlets that would love to have him, and I'll look forward to hearing his podcast on iTunes and every other place. But but there's no reason why he shouldn't be on YouTube too. Talk to you guys soon.